use it as an opportunity to engage personally. Or, dear so-and-so, I really enjoyed chatting with you at that conference yesterday. I'm learning about the work you're doing on subject X. Hope we have an opportunity to connect in the future. You know, something where it's substantive, they also know it's a personal invitation and not this generic canned invitation will make a huge difference, and it will help them remember who you are. It is also a nice way to connect with people if you are going through and finding people you went to college with and you haven't been in touch. You might just a little, hey, how's all's well with you? I'm in law school now. Things are going great. If you're ever in San Francisco, let me know. Just personalize it a little bit. That will really increase your the likelihood people will accept your invitation. So you might, there's some obvious folks, you might, professors, people at Golden Gate, people you've worked with, those are some obvious folks. You might look at your friends and colleagues' LinkedIn profiles to see who they're connected to, and you may say, oh, I know that person, let me reach out and try to connect with them as well. You do want to try to have a nice, robust network. You can search your groups for potential contacts, so as you're going through the Golden Gate group, your other alumni groups, you might look for people. They're like, oh, I remember her, let me reach out to that person and see how they're doing. And so, you can search if you're moving to, Atlanta, and you want us to do, we have alums in Atlanta, and you look through the GGU thing, and sure enough, there are. Maybe you send invitations, hey, GGU alums, I'm coming to Atlanta, I'd love to connect with you and meet with you. So there are different ways you could find people and reach out to them. I would encourage you, if people are sending you invitations, to try to only accept, you should have your own personal protocol, but I would only accept people that you know, okay? Because also other people can see who your connections are, and so if there's some crazy person there, you don't want people to somehow affiliate you with them, or, and you can always hide them or delete them as a contact, but I would really try to say yes to the people you actually know or have met and feel comfortable being affiliated with on LinkedIn. Okay, so a couple other sort of strategies for really cultivating contacts through LinkedIn. I get an email with a status update periodically that lists, the activity of my colleagues on LinkedIn. So I'll see in this one email, so-and-so updated their job, or someone got a new job, or they have a new publication, or, so I try to send emails to them. So, hey, so-and-so, congratulations, I just saw on LinkedIn you got a new job, hope it's going well. That's it, makes them feel good. It's a way for them to see you're engaged, you're interested in their success, it puts you back on the radar screen, it's another contact with them. And so I would do that regularly. Whenever people have some good news to share, just send them a quick email to congratulate them. I would use this to share those interesting articles because it makes you look smart and engaged. You can even make some interesting referrals. So maybe you've been chatting with your professor who's looking for to meet some attorneys with expertise in a particular area, and the supervisor from your internship last summer has that expertise. Well, maybe you connect those two through LinkedIn. So there you're adding value to both your supervisor and your professor. And so again, that makes you valuable to other people. Now, you don't only want to connect with people online. This is a tool. This is not a substitute. These are not actual real relationships, right? Sometimes we get so caught up in this social media universe that we have to meet face-to-face. So I use LinkedIn as a tool in combination with face-to-face networking. So if you go to a networking event, we'll start talking about that in just a moment, maybe you had a really nice conversation with someone, they seem genuinely interested in you, they give you your card, they say stay in touch. Well, then maybe instead of following up with an email, you follow up with you connect on LinkedIn, same kind of thing. You put in the invitation, the same content you would have put in a regular email, but now you're adding them to your group of contacts. I've had people send me LinkedIn invitations after job interview. Like I've interviewed them for jobs. I ended up not hiring them. And even then, they still LinkedIn with me, which I don't know if I suggest that for everyone, but sometimes when you get to that finalist stage and they really liked you and you feel like you've developed a relationship and for whatever reason they hired the other person, well, maybe this is a way to salvage that contact and have a professional relationship with them. And then I would use LinkedIn to arrange those in-person meetings. So as I suggested, if you're going out of town or you want to meet someone in a particular practice area and learned about them on LinkedIn, this might be a way to find them and identify them so you can set up something in person. But you really want these these things to work together. One is not a substitute for the other. So while LinkedIn can be helpful for shy people, you still have to talk to people. It's about actual relationships. So do you want to talk a little bit about what happens when you are in the room face-to-face with strangers? But before we move off, I just want to see if there are any specific LinkedIn ideas or questions. Yeah.
Are there any like downsides? Like, do you hear about people getting hacked and stuff like compared with you hear about people getting spammed and all kinds of stuff on Facebook? Does that have?
I don't hear those stories so much about LinkedIn. I mean, I don't know that anything is, but it's a pretty robust system with a lot of firewalls and protections, and it's well maintained. And frankly, I mean, the whole value of this is they have high-profile people on this website, so they have a lot of interest in maintaining that. So really, the downside is if you put stuff out there about you that you don't want out there. I see this as only an upside, really. There's some good tutorials on LinkedIn. There's a learning center on LinkedIn that you can go to for more tips. I also brought with me a handout published by NALP. It's part of a series of e-guides on social media or on e-professionalism. And I brought one on LinkedIn that gives you some tips, and there's some links in there to some resources to help you get started. And then I also brought one on email and how to be effective with your email and avoid some pitfalls there. Let's just talk for a couple minutes about holiday parties, because that season is upon us. And despite this guy maybe who celebrated a little bit too much, holiday parties can be a nice way to meet lawyers. It's the same kind of thing where it doesn't have to be such a intensely planned sort of thing, but you go to a party, people are in a good mood, it's a nice way to meet people, and so I really encourage you to take advantage of that. And for those of you who are 3Ls or recent graduates, you want to be out there mixing with the lawyers, and you want to be in their midst and hanging out with them. You walk in the door, they think you're one of them, there's no reason to think you're anything else, and so it's just a good way to start making those connections. So we're going to focus on 5 tips, how to have that entrance, how do you engage with folks, making sure you look appropriate, and then we'll focus on some follow-up tips. So when you walk in the room, a couple things. You want to get a name tag. If it's the kind where you have to handwrite a name tag, write your name large and clearly so people can actually see your name. A lot of us feel sheepish about name tags, but you want people to remember you and remember your name. And you will come to value name tags because you're trying to remember what was the name of that guy I met, and if he's wearing a name tag, it helps. If you put on a name tag, put it on your right side. Okay, so because when people shake your hand, their eye travels this way, so they're more likely to see it if it's on your right side. Okay, so you walk in the room, look around, just kind of take in the room. Where are people standing? Do I know anybody here? Sometimes it's nice if you recognize a familiar face to at least go talk to that person. Maybe that person was someone you did an informational interview with that you met through LinkedIn. But whatever it is, go look for that person that you know. Maybe I sometimes like to cruise the perimeter of the room, because that's where the other shy and nervous people are, and they're waiting for someone to come up and say hello to them. So if you're feeling shy and nervous, find someone else who's shy and nervous. They'll be so thrilled that you stop to talk to them, and that'll give you some confidence, and maybe they're an interesting, nice person. So that's a nice way to start. I also like to go sort of the opposite route and look for kind of the people in charge. So I went to an event recently for an organization I didn't know a soul. I walked in the room, you have that feeling like they all know each other, they're part of some private club, I'm an outsider walking in. So I kind of looked around. It was an event to honor a couple of people, so I went to the people who were being honored, figuring they were there to be friendly and talk to lots of people because the event was in their honor. So I talked to those people. And then I figured out who was in charge. And so I walked up to that person and I said, introduce myself, let them know I worked here. And I asked questions about the organization. And what I did is and I encourage you to do this, I sort of represented GGU. So, oh, I'd love to learn more about your organization. How can our students get involved? Can you tell me more about your activities? They, of course, would love to talk about that stuff. And so even if, you might do that. I would love to get involved in your organization. Can you tell me more about it? And maybe they help introduce you to people. Or you can pretend you're representing us. You say, oh, so many of my classmates would be really interested in this, or I'm with a student organization that relates to this topic. Can you tell me more about it? And I can bring that information back to my campus. So sometimes kind of putting on the outfit of GG representative might give you a little bit more courage to go talk to some of those folks. But they're very well connected. They know everybody in the room. You might go hang out by the food and drink area because people tend to loiter there. And so, you know, that might be a way to start chit-chatting with people over there. But it gets a little bit awkward if you're juggling lots of food and drinks and stuff. But you know, whatever strategy works. If you go with a friend, walk in with a friend, but you might want to make a deal with each other. Okay, we need to go our separate ways, and let's meet up in 20 minutes. And then maybe you introduce each other to the people you've met. So now it's expanding people that you know. Okay, so you actually have to talk and listen to people. So you do want to pay attention to your introduction. You want to make sure you have a good handshake. You're looking people in the eye. Your hand might be wet if you're holding your drink. So I recommend holding your drink in your left hand, so your hand doesn't get all wet. If, you know, you can always subtly get a napkin, make sure your hand is nice and dry, give a nice firm handshake, meet them, you know, make eye contact, smile, and introduce yourself. So introduce yourself with your first name and your last name. Say it slowly and clearly. And have a little personal statement about who you are. So if you just say, hi, I'm a law student, well, that's very interesting. It forces them to ask questions to draw you out. So maybe have a little, hi, I'm a law student at Golden Gate, and I've been focusing on intellectual property law. Or if you're at an IP event, maybe you say I have a particular interest in trademark law, if you know that these folks are a little bit more specialized. But have something to say that's interesting about you or interesting about your goals. It should be upbeat. You know, it should be, hi, I'm a 3L and I'm freaked out about what's happening after graduation. You know, nobody wants to talk to the freaked out person. So have it be succinct and upbeat. And then I really encourage you to focus on listening. And this is not, students get so nervous, they have to be experts and know everything. Focus on the other person. Ask them questions. If they don't introduce themselves, you know, ask them what their name is. Ask about their affiliations. How long have they been with that organization? Right now you might not necessarily say, hi, what's your job, or what do you do, because people might be between jobs. So maybe you say, you know, so what keeps you busy now? Because maybe they'll talk about their volunteer work, or their job, or their other affiliations. And then ask a lot of questions about them. But here, one thing you do want to just remember the person's name. So there are a couple of tricks that you can use. You know, so when they introduce themselves to you, you might say, oh, hi, Bonnie, it's nice to meet you. Like, repeat their name as they're talking, repeat their name in your head. Some people like to use mnemonic devices, but I find that I'd be too distracted coming up with a mnemonic device that I wouldn't hear anything else that they say. It's helpful to write their name down. I've heard people recommend even tracing their name, like with your finger on your leg. There's something about the actual act of writing their name that helps you remember their name and register it. So either after they leave, maybe write it down, or just on your lid or on the table and just kind of spell it out and just make a concerted effort to remember their name. That will go a long way. But overall, just show interest in them. Ask questions. They tell you something, ask a follow-up question. You know, it's a great way to use some of your direct examination skills. It should not be a cross-exam, right? You don't want to ask these very intense questions, but just each question might lead to another piece of information. Don't worry how this person will help you in your career and help you find a job. Just be interested in who they are and what's interesting to them. So, you know, you can ask them about the areas of law they practice, or if you're at an organization, you might ask them, what's your connection to this organization? Have you been involved for a while? Can you suggest some ways? You know, I'm new here. Can you give me some tips about good events to go to? Or, you know, get them talking about this organization. If they're doing work that you find interesting, or frankly, you don't find interesting, but whatever, you might say, you know, do you have tips for ways I could learn more about that? Are there other events or things I should be reading if I wanted to explore this area more? You want to leave them with the impression that you are motivated and engaged and interested in going beyond just the minimum that's required of you. And they may have some interesting ideas. You never know. All lawyers had to graduate from law school, pass the bar, get a job. So even if they did that in a different discipline or a different region or a different period of time during a different economic cycle, they still had to